Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to our Women Together Connect. My name is Antoinette, and happy to be with you all today and to see everyone coming in. I see already we're saying hello in the chat and sharing where we're coming from. So wherever you may be, I see sunny Santa Fe, Winchester, Massachusetts, sun abounds, Ossining, New York, Dix Hills, New York, chilly Toronto, and San Diego, as well as Sweden. So we are spanning, even in our small group, spanning all over the world today. And you can also feel free, if you're with us on YouTube, to share in the comment section where you're coming from. And as always, it is a joy to be together. It really is a moment where we can just land and land in ourselves, land in our own space, in our world. And as we deal with the complexities of our world, the increasing disturbances and disruptions and just hardships that are happening all over the world, that we can ground, that we can connect with each other. And today we're going to focus on one of my favorite topics, which is listening, but we're going to focus on listening as healing, and really just tune into what that means for us, not just listening externally, but listening internally as well. Both of them are incredibly important. So we thought we'd do a little bit of that before we go into our favorite time, which is connecting with each other in small groups. So if you're here with us on YouTube, you'll go through a little practice together. But if you're here in Zoom, we'll do a little practice together, and then we will dive into the deep practice of connecting. And we know that we feel the magic that happens when we get to really connect with each other. So I feel like we are coming into a room together. It may be digital, but we're coming into a space where we get to walk in and sit in circle together. And there's something really powerful that happens when women come and sit around a circle together, sometimes around a fire in the center or around a centerpiece, maybe a set of flowers, but something in the center that holds us, that glues us together. And so I appreciate those of us who tend the fire week after week, who continue to come back, or those of you who may be new and are just bringing your little log to the fire. Is a way to just connect in circle, one of the oldest human activities. So here we are, and I'd like to just invite us to land in a little moment of stillness. We take these tiny practices to wherever we are in our lives, whatever moment it may be, to just give ourselves a minute, give ourselves a moment to land. Often we do this at the beginning of meetings inside Eileen Fisher, and also wherever, a lot of partner organizations have taken this on, others, because it really does help to just ground, to land, to just take a moment of stillness, to let go of anything that came before this moment, and just be here noticing what's going on, what's coming up, what's moving through. And often we can, in this moment of stillness, kind of oscillate between focusing our attention on something and opening our awareness. So as we focus our attention, let's say on the breath, as we focus our attention on the breath, just moving in and out of the body, the rest of our awareness begins to open. So we focus in on only that one thing, breath, moving in and out of the body. Everything else begins to open. Our awareness becomes much broader. So allowing ourselves to move into that practice of focused attention and open awareness, and then we'll see what comes up. So wherever you may be, feel free to just let your feet or body somehow be touching the floor. Just connecting with the floor beneath you, but then also it maybe are many floors above the earth, above the soil, but just feeling a sense of connectedness. And when you connect down, when you feel the downward energy, you can also, sometimes I like to put my hands on my thighs. So when I put my hands on my thighs, I just push a little bit and I can feel a sense of uplift in the spine. So just doesn't need to be hard, doesn't need to be a lot of pressure, but just noticing when I push down, I also feel a sense of rising up. So just following the inhale into the body, maybe even into the feet, into the soil. And then exhaling, you can close your eyes or lower your gaze, whichever is in your practice, and just feeling the breath, the awareness, the energy moving up the body, up the spine. And just following this inhale and exhale with a focused attention and open awareness for a few moments here together. Just following the breath in and down, and then following the breath out and up. Just allowing yourself to stay with the stillness that may have come for you, and just noticing what brought me here today. Perhaps there's a clear intention. What brought me here to this connection, this space, this little hour together? Perhaps there's a word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear that, and you can, when you're ready, look up, connect with the chat and type in your word or phrase of what brought you here today, and I'll read a few of them out. So what brought us here today: continuity, togetherness, recovery, connection. Wonderful. And I'm sure there's more too. And sometimes it's deeper, you know, that we just want the idea, we want to connect, but there's something also um, kind of, there's something primal about the need to connect with each other. You know, there's some, it meets a deep need of developing relationship. And I know when I am um, at home, and, you know, during the pandemic when I was at home all the time, um, but when I'm at home, I often lose that kind of community connection. And so what we've really done here is given us a kind of drop-in connection space. And I know that we have a lot more ability to go out in the world and physically connect with each other. Again, although I do know that I was supposed to be at a program this past week, and they were just everybody was getting sick. So, you know, both things are true, but it can be worth it. So it depends For some people it is, and some people it's really not. But yeah, creating a practice of connection. And I think that's, that's really a big part of it. It's that it's not something that I just connect and then I move on. Often when we have these connections, they're very surface level. Even I was talking with a friend yesterday, she called me, and oddly, I picked up the phone, right? But she called, I picked up, and we realized that we'd seen each other a number of times in the last few months, and yet we hadn't really spent time connecting with each other. We'd had a kind of hi, how are you, kind of surface level, but not a real kind of deep how are you, kind of a real connection with the being of who I am. And it takes practice. It takes practice to be able to do that connection. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you can do it quickly and it just kind of happens. But really creating a practice of connection is what we're doing here too, is that um, this group is able to drop in much quicker than we were able to do a few years ago. We're able to move into a breakout room and not just try to get to know each other and spend this little bit of time, but really drop into our own personal experience. So if you're new, you kind of jump into that field a little bit of what we've been practicing and cultivating. And for those of you who continue to come back, we have that experience of dropping in pretty immediately, and we have a container in a way of being able to connect and being able to practice that connection. So thank you for sharing that and bringing that in. And wisdom sharing is another one that came in, and I think those are all related and connected. So I try to bring up a topic. Sometimes we have a teacher that comes in and shares a topic. I said that one of my favorites is listening, and listening is healing. It's actually something that I study and have studied for many years and teach as well. But thinking about levels of listening, we've done a lot of work in here on that. So some of this might be little bits of repeat, but a lot of it is also thinking about listening as healing. So what happens, I know what happens when I am a leader and I listen. I can be more effective. I can run my business, or I can run my organization in a more effective and efficient way. When I listen to my customers, I can, create a product that really works for them, things like that. And it's crucial. Listening is a key component to leadership. We know that. It is probably the key component to leadership. It's also a key component to change or transformation of any kind, really deeply listening to what's needed. We can also listen for the emerging future of what's happening, what's going to happen next, so we can have this kind of stance of listening to the world around us. But what happens when we are listening as healing? What happens when we're listening in a way that allows ourselves and allows each other to become more whole? Because the root of the word healing is to become whole. So how do we listen in a way that allows these parts of ourselves that may be dormant to come back together? And do that for others as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. I had a couple of quotes that I wanted to share, and then I'll go back into that line of thinking just for a few minutes before we go into breakouts. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "Deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose: to help him or her to empty his heart." I'll read it again. Deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose: to help him or her to empty his heart. And I think that is a beautiful description of what I would call empathic listening, where we're really putting ourselves in the shoes of another. We're really deeply listening to what the experience has been, and we're going outside of ourselves, outside of our own experience. But I loved what he said about relieving the suffering of another person. That, often we think that we need to do so much to take care of each other, and we try to do something physical and try to do something that is going, really it takes a lot of our energy to show up. Um, and what I love about this concept is that just the mere act of listening, which can also take a lot of energy, but the mere act of listening can relieve the suffering of another person. And it makes me think about, well, what is suffering then? Because if somebody's in, lying there in physical pain and you're like, tell me about it, that may not do the trick. And, may take their mind off of it. That could be a lot of things, right? But what's the difference then between pain and suffering? And I love the way that I had a yoga teacher, and I'm sure that you've heard this in various ways, but I had a yoga teacher who shared with me that pain is only a kind of, it happens. There's something that may happen, but that is only a few seconds. Suffering is when we continuously are thinking about that pain, that continuous sort of stays with us. We continue to remember it. So even if I, get into a fight with somebody, or somebody says something that's mean, or I feel it's mean, it hurt me, in some way, that moment that happened is absolutely, painful. And then I notice that I'll be in conversation with someone and I'll feel that was really mean and I didn't, or that didn't feel good for me. And I will tend to, in my not best Antoinette moments, not highest self Antoinette moments, I will stay with that. And I will say, I'm really not happy about that, for quite some time. And that's my work, that's on me, how much I hold on to that, even after the person has apologized, right? And I got married when I have this kind of conversation, right? So, that my husband will say something and I'm like, that was really mean, and I'm not letting it go, but that is what causes more suffering for myself, and of course, there are things where you might want to actually change the connection you have with another person, or there are things that continuously perpetrate the pain, and that's something you look at. But there are a lot of moments where we kind of perpetuate our own suffering. We get in our own ways, and so the question is, how do we actually pause? How do we slow down? How do we kind of look at that thought and relieve the suffering, and sometimes we just need to be heard. We need to feel that we're heard. Because what would happen in that moment if he or the person I'm connecting with said, I really hear that that was painful for you. If they really deeply listened to me, that might stop me in my tracks too, that might give me a little breath to say, wow, I've been heard, and that moment may have hurt. And you know what? I think that, this person now really understands that that was hurtful. And since they understand, maybe they won't do it again. Maybe they will, but that's on me to figure out what to do if they keep doing it. So I give that just as the Thich Nhat Hanh quote struck me in the sense of, how can my listening relieve the suffering of another person? And it could be, something that I've inflicted. It could be something that, they just went through. But how can my listening relieve the suffering of another person? And I loved this quote by a woman named Brenda Uland, who said, when we are listened to, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. Ideas actually begin to grow within us and come to life. I'll read it one more time. When we are listened to, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand. Ideas actually begin to grow within us and come to life. And I love this one because, and I'll put that one in the chat if I can. Yep. Because one of my teachers and friends, Otto Scharmer, he says, we can listen someone to her greatness. We can listen someone to her greatness. And this idea of when we are listened to, it creates us. So when I'm able to express and I'm feeling that I'm heard, when someone's really deeply listening to me, or when I'm listening to, I had a conversation with a 15-year-old over the weekend, a 15-year-old girl, and I love working with 15-year-old girls. They're amazing. And in part because they're in this moment of transition in their lives. So they're becoming. And what's amazing is that moment of becoming when they're being heard, when they are being listened to, when they are not being told who they should be by their teachers, by their parents, by their community leaders, when they are just being listened to for who they are, that they become who they're truly, who they're truly becoming. All of those influences are there, but they get to choose. They get to become who they truly are. And I think that's true for all of us. Whenever we go through moments of transition, whenever we're, facing something in our own lives, in our world, when we're recovering from something, that when, and I treat a lot of moments as threshold moments, when I can become the next version of myself. And so this idea of this next version of me is right around the corner. It could be right in this next conversation, that there is a possibility that there's a part of myself that I haven't met yet. And when we listen to each other with this kind of potential and possibility of what could unfold, what could happen in this conversation and this connection, that we have the opportunity to become that person, that we have the opportunity to become this person that we haven't yet met. And so, yeah, I love this little piece. When we are listened to, it creates us. And that's also why I love journaling, because it gives us an opportunity to. I was having a conversation with this 15-year-old, and I asked her how she's relating to herself. And she was like, "What does that mean?" And I was like, "How are you listening to yourself?" And amazing that it was a new concept, right? But that we can journal, that we can have this conversation with ourselves, that we can have a conversation with our own intuition. So I invite us to, just for a couple of moments, you can either journal, you can, write, use this moment to write, or you can just go back into this stillness space and connecting with yourself. Often before I can listen to anyone else, I need to do that self-relating thing where I can just listen to myself and hear what's going on in here today, what's happening, and what does my intuition say? What is wanting to be created in me, and what happens when I listen to myself? So I'll just invite us into a little moment of stillness again before we connect with each other in our small groups. So wherever you may be, if you can just again just feel a sense of groundedness, feel the feet on the floor, maybe close your eyes or lower your gaze, and just do a little scan. So you can scan the physical body, just listening to what is going on in the physical body today. Perhaps there's a more loud sensation, something trying to tell you something, or more subtle sensations. Or maybe places where you notice you can't feel, or you're not really feeling that area. As with any relationship, the relationship with self takes work. So just giving yourself an opportunity to ask and answer, to ask, what is here for me today? and to listen for the response. And also check in with your emotional body. Same question, just scanning. What is here for me today? And if you're in your emotional body, just recognizing if something is wanting to be felt. Something that hasn't been felt is wanting to be felt. Then maybe we can do mental and spirit. When I think about the spirit, it's really more on a vertical. So just maybe even tuning into the space just above the top of your head. Sometimes we think of spirit as being low or being high. So I am in high spirits or I'm in low spirits. So it might just be a sensation of feeling lower to the ground, lower in the body, or maybe higher, more elevated, more in tune. Just being aware of where we are today. And then scanning the mental space, noticing if the mind is free and clear. The mind has a lot of thoughts, it's scattered. Just seeing what's there today. And really listening for what wants to be heard. When you're ready, you can reconnect with the screen and we will turn to each other in small groups. And the invitation is to dive into just what is coming up. And it could be either directly about your listening. So it could be that I've been actually, kind of steamrolling through conversations and here's what my listening is today and just noticing that. Or you could share any of the things of what just came up. So what came up in your kind of body scan, multi-body scan, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. All right, so we have some time to connect. We'll do about 20 minutes and then we'll still have about 7 minutes at the end here to have a little dialogue. I do think this is the absolute best time of our Women Together Connect, is to get to actually chat with each other and do the practice. So enjoy the time together, and I hope that we can unfold and expand and be created in this next 20 minutes or so that we have with each other. So share your name, where you're coming from, and anything from the topics that just came up. Enjoy the time. See you back in about 20 minutes.